Up next, we're talking with Ryan Decker of Scout Motors to learn about how they plan on selling and servicing their upcoming Traveler SUV and Terra pickup truck. We'll learn more about the versatility of these upcoming vehicles and, of course, how important their new Harvester range extender will be to the performance of both of these models. So make sure you stick around for that and a whole lot more right here on GreenCars, the podcast. This is GreenCars, the podcast. If you're a first-time listener, thanks so much for joining us. If you're a returning customer, we're glad to have you back again. I am automotive journalist Craig Cole, and of course, I am joined on the line right now by my co-host, Sam Abuelsamid, who's also the Vice President of Market Research at Telemetry. And Sam, great to see you again.
It's always great to be here with you, Craig.
Yeah. I understand you've been getting some stamps in your passport. You've been doing a bit of traveling lately.
Yeah, I just got back Saturday night from Japan. Spent the better part of the week there visiting Toyota's Woven City project, which sits in the shadow of Mount Fuji. And we should actually be learning more about that in the coming weeks. When hopefully we will have the CTO of Woven by Toyota joining us.
That will be a fantastic interview. A lot to talk about because they're building literally a whole city and making it very sustainable, right?
Yeah. So the idea there is it's both a proving ground, it's a business and technology incubator, and a place where a bunch of people are living. They plan to grow it to about 2,000 people living there. But right now there's about 100. They just opened up a few months ago. And they're trying out all kinds of interesting technologies.
Yeah, so like autonomous vehicles and delivery and stuff like that?
Yeah, they're doing stuff with, they've got little autonomous, they call them the guide mobi, that all the vehicles, they have a fleet of shared vehicles that everybody living and working there can use. When you need one, you just go on your app and say, hey, I need a car. And the guide mobi wirelessly tows the car from the parking garage where they've got it set up as a virtual power plant, brings the car to you. You get in, drive off. The guide mobi goes back and does something else. It can be used for towing little trailers around for utility crews, groundskeepers, things like that. So they've also got these e-pallet electric shuttles that they're going to be testing there with autonomous driving systems as well.
Wow, really building the future. But in today's show, we're talking with Ryan Decker. He's the Vice President of Strategy and Brand at a little company called Scout. And a lot of listeners, maybe they haven't heard of Scout. Can you fill us in on what it is, Sam?
Yeah, so Scout is a revived brand. It was actually part of International Harvester back decades ago. Mm-hmm. I think they ended production of the original International Harvester Scouts back about 1984 or so. And so the Scout brand has been sitting dormant. But a few years back, Traton, which is the heavy duty truck and bus division of the Volkswagen Group, acquired Navistar, which has now also been rebranded as International, gone back to the original name. And with that, they got the rights to the Scout trademark, and they wanted to do something different. And they brought back the Scout brand name for a new car manufacturer that is totally owned by Volkswagen Group. But as we'll hear from Ryan, it's owned by Volkswagen Group, but it's not part of Volkswagen. So we'll hear all about that from Ryan in a few minutes.
Yeah, because we recently uploaded a whole separate YouTube video where we interviewed Ryan and Scout designer Chris Benjamin as well. But we had a lot more questions about what's going on at the company, so we're making sure to cover that here in this episode of the podcast. Plus, we received all kinds of questions and comments on that video, so we're going to try to answer some viewer points as well. But going into this interview, Sam, what are your top questions for Ryan, if you had one or two to share?
Yeah, so big things I was looking for was to learn a little bit more about how the range extender is likely to impact the performance of the Traveler SUV and the Terra pickup truck. because there's been some concerns because of the way that Scout is installing the range extender engine in the truck, that it might have an impact on towing capability, which is kind of the whole point of having a range extended truck or SUV. Yeah. So hopefully we'll learn a little bit more about that from Ryan, as well as kind of what they're doing, what their plans are for servicing the vehicles.
Yes,
if
that's
they're
a big one.
Going to be separate from Volkswagen. They're not using Volkswagen dealers. So we'll learn all about that in a few minutes.
Yeah. And Sam, I'd really like to know how they're going to sell these vehicles directly to consumers without running afoul of any franchise laws, which I imagine are pretty complicated in all 50 states of the union here. But we'll get to our interview with Ryan here in just a minute. But really quick, find your next ride at GreenCars.com. We've got expert reviews. There's a helpful buyer's guide. We have an EV matchmaker and a whole lot more. That's GreenCars.com, which is your hub for sustainable motoring. And of course, Scout Motors is aiming to help drivers go green without making any sacrifices, and they're doing that with their upcoming Traveler SUV and Terra pickup truck. And to fill us in on how the development of these upcoming vehicles is going along, we've got the man with all the answers. It's Ryan Decker. He's the Vice President of Strategy and Brand at Scout. And of course, Ryan, welcome to the show. It's good to see you again.
It's good to see you as well, Craig.
Yeah.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, we chatted a few weeks or a month ago back at your Innovation Center in Novi, Michigan, and we've got more questions for you. So glad you could make it to the show here.
I hope I have answers.
Yes, yeah. So but really, just to start things off, fill us in on the status of these vehicles. They've been under development for a while. We're getting closer to the launch date. When can people drive one home?
We're right in the thick of our project development effort. And as you know, Scout Motors isn't just building two models. We're building an entire company, a factory, a sales network, a service network, everything all at the same time. So no matter where you look in this company, you're going to see something getting built. So to say we're hard at work is probably a bit of an understatement. But on the vehicle project itself, we showed the show cars to the world in 2024. And since then, we've been putting them through the ringer. So for us, that means testing, cold weather, durability. That means awarding parts suppliers. That means maturing these products into something that's producible. And of course, something that's meeting the quality expectations of our customers. So that's where we are right now. Big picture, timing, we will start building our first validation models this year on the ground in Blythewood, which is a huge milestone for us as an entire company. But a huge milestone there on the ground in Blythewood for the first folks who will get to make these products, with their hands in our own factory. From there, that production effort will mature through 2027, and we're going to get these into the hands of customers in 2028.
Very nice. So just a couple more years then. Getting close.
Yeah. So one of the things that changed, you mentioned, first showing the vehicles in late 2024. At that time, that was, I think, when you first announced that the vehicle was going to be available not just as a battery electric truck and SUV, but also as a range extender. So, with that addition of the range extender to the program, how does that impact the development? And also, well, I'll let you start with that first, and then I've got a follow up from that.
Sam, great question. And it's the right question because the reality is this company did start developing all electric models, and the change to develop an EREV was a pivot that did come a little bit later. Now, what we really wanted to prioritize is how do we execute that EREV approach as elegantly and as seamlessly into the work that we had already done. So for us, that means the EREV and the BEV have a tremendous amount of carryover. We didn't want to have to rip apart everything and start over. So same platform approach, same drive unit approach. What we've done is we were able to package in the gas engine and the fuel tank and the exhaust and all the gas components as near adaptable as you could without having, again, rip apart the entire platform. From a company perspective, what that means is it gives Scout Motors this really unique future-proof ability to respond to whatever the market tells us. If one day the market tells us we want to go 100% electric, that's what customers are saying, that's what regulations are saying, we can do that in our platform and we can do that in our factory. And with this very modular, very adaptable approach, if the market tells us, in fact, we want to go 100% EREV, we can do that too by keeping the EREV engine as modular as we could. Now, but yes, so that means it's additional competencies on the team. That meant more thermal engineering, that meant more serviceability requirements. And that's the things that I think the team has done a really great job rapidly responding to in Novi, as Craig brought up earlier.
So to follow up on that, one of the things that your boss Scott Keogh talked about during that event was that modular approach to installing it. So basically, packaging the range extender, the fuel tank, and everything else in a module that will be installed at the back of the vehicle behind the rear axle, which from an engineering and packaging standpoint, I think makes total sense because that preserves the frunk. You still have the frunk, but there are some people that I know, who have expertise with trucks and SUVs, particularly with towing, that have some concerns about that approach because now you've added some extra weight back there. And so how is that going to impact the towing capability of these vehicles? Because that's obviously very important for a full-size truck or SUV, is the ability to tow. And so is that going to have much of an impact on things like the maximum tongue weight that you can have, the ability to tow?
Tim, it's again another great question. So for us, I think first principle was how do we preserve what people started to love about these Scout products? And for us, that did mean a lot of Chris Benjamin's design intent. So super upright, very short front overhang, the ability to package 35-inch tires, the front trunk, the weight shifted rearward, all of those really design elements that became fundamental to the proportions of this vehicle, none of which were really able to be executed upon if you wanted to put the engine in the front. So we wanted to preserve the overall design theme and the overall intent of what made a Scout. That lended itself to putting the engine in the rear. The second thing that we wanted to preserve was this adaptability that I brought up earlier, Sam. So we wanted to preserve the good parts of this EV platform. Again, front trunk, torque, the adaptability, the ability to respond to various EV adoption pathways. Again, you lose all of that if you made the decision to really put the engine in the front. That meant exhaust being routed through the basically center of the platform. The whole thing sort of would lose its ability to be able to still be a EV platform, which, let's see what happens as we make our way well into the 2030s. So you preserve the overall design intent, you preserve the off-road characteristics, you preserve all of the things that make a Scout, and you preserve the ability to respond to various EV adoption pathways. So for us, the decision was the right one to put the engine into the rear. And now, Sam, what you're bringing up is just, this is the engineering work that this is what we're doing, right? So, of course, are there challenges with putting the engine in the rear? Yeah, but there also would have been challenges of putting the engine in the front with having to route things around the battery, etc. But it's a task that our engineers are up for because we do believe it was the right decision. Now, on some of these more specific KPIs, Sam, we're going to announce everything when we get it really buttoned up and dialed in. But we are not naive that people who are buying Scouts want a tool. They want to go far. They want to tow. They want a lot of versatility. So we are not naive, and we are clear-eyed, focusing on the requirements that we have in front of us. We also need to recognize that there are sort of two different sets of requirements. Yeah, a Traveler buyer is likely a little different in terms of its capability than a Terra buyer might have. And so we might have a few other things that we will do that are specific to the Terra, more to come, that ensure that we're delivering for sure on all of the requirements that we see across both models.
All right, thanks.
So just staying on this subject for a moment here, you guys are calling the range extender the Harvester, a great throwback heritage name. Basically, that's just so the viewers understand that's a gasoline engine that will run and charge the battery, power the vehicle, so they don't have to worry about plugging in if they're on a longer trip or they're towing their boat or something, right?
Yeah, Craig, that's exactly right? So we have a gas engine that's basically functioning as a generator that has one job and one job only, which is to charge the battery. And, if you think about what that allows you to do with the engine, it allows you to really tune it and get it performing in its really efficient sweet spots. So when it's not having to deal with gear ratios and transmissions, it only has one job, which is to charge the battery. It allows you to tune that engine to do that as efficiently as possible, which we think is another net positive for the customer when they see the benefit that translates to in terms of efficiency and MPG, etc. So we're quite optimistic the more we learn about what this engine will do and how we can tune it and calibrate it to just charge this battery up as efficiently as possible.
Yeah, because with using it just as a generator, you can keep it right in the sweet spot for efficiency and get a lot better,
Exactly.
stretch each gallon of gas a little bit farther than you normally would if you had a transmission and a conventional drivetrain. So from our previous video, we had a number of questions from some of the viewers. Chris Graham, 2904, was wondering about that rear positioning and maintenance. Will there be a hatch in the bed? How do you get to the engine? And then similarly, Aaron Carlberg, 471, had a question about overall serviceability. Will it be part of my local VW dealership in case there are issues with the first models? So how do you access the engine, and where do customers go if they do need service work?
I'll cover the access point first, that is one of the requirements that we are deeply and meaningfully integrating into the project, which is serviceability. For a few reasons. I think reason one is we're paying attention to customers, and we know that customers in these categories have a certain DIY sort of tinker culture orientation to them. They want to touch things and put their hands on things themselves, and we want to make sure that we enable them to do that by making things as accessible and as easy and as time effective as possible to do those DIY kind of repair jobs that we know customers will want to do. The second point is then sort of what you're getting at, Craig, with the where do I go, which is from a business perspective. Of course, we want to make repair orders as efficient as possible. But where will customers go? Customers will go to Scout-owned facilities that we will be investing in, where customers will get their vehicles serviced. These will be hard-working facilities. We're not going to be investing in brick and mortar locations where you can go and see these things in a mall. We'll do a little bit of that. But in general, we want our brick and mortar facilities to be hard-working spaces, which is what we know customers want out of brick and mortar. Can I get my vehicle serviced, or do I need to wait X months to get an appointment? Can I get spare parts to this location? So that's what we're investing in ourselves and what we want to deliver for our customers, no doubt. But again, going back to that spirit of ease, we also see a scenario where some repair jobs will be able to be done right there in a customer's driveway at home. So we want to make sure that we're also accommodating a bit of a mobile service orientation. And to do that, we want these repair jobs to be as easy as we can make them.
So, some of your competitors that are relatively, newer brands like Rivian and others have had some challenges since they launched with customers having to wait longer for service appointments, especially if it's something that can't be done mobile. Can you give us an idea of how big your service network is going to be, how accessible it's going to be to customers?
Of course, all of those details are currently being derived, and I can't share all of them, but what we are actively planning is that for our capacity will exceed demand in our ramp-up phase. We do not want customers to be waiting weeks or months to get appointments or to get parts. So that is something we are hyper aware of. I would say we do have a bit of, I guess you could say, a third mover advantage, Sam, where we've observed some of those pain points in the market over the last years, and we know exactly how to address them, and we are. And that is by building capacity that will exceed the demand that we see over the next few years, no doubt.
So will those brick and mortar facilities be standalone service centers, or are those going to be tacked on to, say, a Volkswagen dealership? How would you handle that?
We have no association with a Volkswagen brand or frankly any brand, Craig. So there's certainly no connection to any other car brands facilities. These will be standalone Scout Motors facilities that, again,
Gotcha.
They'll do a couple jobs, but job one will be to ensure we're delivering upon a good customer experience. And that definitely includes service and delivery.
Gotcha. Because that's a question I also wanted to ask. Just explain the relationship between Scout Motors and the Volkswagen Group, because it's a little muddy even to me.
You asked the right question, Craig. So the Volkswagen Group, not the Volkswagen brand, and I think it's important to delineate that those are two different entities. So the Volkswagen Group, which is the parent company in Germany, is our shareholder. We are completely owned and financed by them at the moment, and we're proud to have that support. For us, it's not just financing. We're able to tap into the Volkswagen Group for expertise. We know how to build a factory. We're able to tap into the Volkswagen Group when it comes to getting certain terms of trade and scale benefits from suppliers. So I think we sort of have a really interesting competitive setup in that on one hand, we're an American startup that started building this company from 2 employees. We now just cracked 1,300, but low cost base, low baggage, low overheads, everything's built for purpose. But on the other hand, of course, we do have the backing of one of the world's largest OEM groups behind us, which we believe is is a very interesting sort of superpower when it comes to new automotive entrants that no one else has had.
Like the best of both worlds, kind of.
So another question from the from the from the viewers of the previous video. This is from a little of this and that 5665. Looking underneath the Terra truck, there's never been any mention of where the spare tire is or where it will be, and that's especially for a truck that's targeted at more of an adventure audience. People are more likely to go off road. Having a spare tire is really important. It's one thing, for a car that's only driving on roads, but if you're going off somewhere more remote, as you might be with these vehicles, will there be a spare? And where would it likely be located?
It's a really good question.
Hey, Sam, I certainly saw this question myself on the YouTube video. So, 2 points, not to hedge, but of course, all production intent details and offer structure details haven't been disclosed yet. But as you know, it's also not necessarily atypical to see bed-mounted solutions as well, right? So more to come. More production intent will be announced in due time over the coming months. But again, when we look across what competitors are doing, particularly competitors that have a little bit more of an off-road orientation, we're certainly paying attention to their approaches as well on this topic. So more to come, Sam.
All right.
So how are you guys? You're going to sell directly to consumers through your website, right? That's the sort of the sales model.
Yeah, it's going to be a digital first solution, definitely direct to consumer, Craig.
Yeah. So are there any concerns about franchise laws in different states? I imagine it's a complete patchwork of different regulations everywhere. That's very difficult to navigate. And how are you dealing with those going forward?
Again, I guess you can call it third or fourth mover, kind of observing things. Scout Motors, as an independent company, will be taking the same approach as Tesla, Lucid, and Rivian, and the other independent brands and manufacturers that have gone direct to consumer. Scout Motors has not and will not and has never had dealers. We don't have dealer franchise contracts. So we're establishing our sales model up from a clean sheet. And with that, our imperative is to do right and compete for our customers. And so right now we're building an all new factory, all new products, all new company. We thought that the right way forward was to deliver upon an all new sales model that allows us to deliver the best possible experience, transactions, transparent transactions, transparent pricing, digital first speed. And again, at the end of the day, we just want to compete. That's what we want to do. And we want to let customers decide. And if we do a good job, customers will reward us. And if we don't, we'll step it up. But we want to compete, and that's job one for us.
Love to hear it.
From a pricing standpoint, it's been talked of target starting price of around $60,000. That's by today's standards for full size trucks and SUVs. That's actually not bad. It's not cheap, but it's a very competitive price. Compared to what you would pay for most gas trucks today or SUVs. So are you comfortable with that pricing? And do you anticipate beyond the Terra and the Traveler, eventually expanding the lineup with perhaps something more affordable or smaller vehicles?
Yeah, Sam, I understand again why you're asking the question, right? Pricing and affordability is certainly sort of a macro topic. But for us, when we look at our core competitors, you got to this a little bit, Sam. When we look at average transaction prices today, right now, we think we're going to be very competitive in a few years. Of course, when we come to market with the pricing that we've announced, we are holding the line at starting pricing right around 60 without any incentives. And we believe that is a compelling zone for the type of vehicle you're getting in a Traveler and a Terra. Now, of course, to go one level of detail deeper, I think you need to look at the sort of the value that you get for the price. And in our case, a vehicle of our size, our design, which we know people love, our interior spec, our fit and finish, our capability when it comes to 4x4 and torque and performance and range, we believe we're delivering upon a really compelling product, a lot of customer value for the price. So we have a lot of confidence that we will go into these segments and be very competitive. Now, bigger picture, of course, one day if we're allowed to dream big, of course, you can imagine all kinds of additional Scout models. But for us, we're very much focused on Traveler and Terra. That's the opportunity that's right in front of us. And we want to go deliver upon what we've communicated right around 60K, which we think is a good starting point for these vehicles.
Because that's a lot of money to a lot of people, but it's also not an outrageous sum, because you can easily push a full-size pickup truck well past that if you start checking the options boxes.
Yeah,
so
it's easy to get into the six figures now.
yeah, which is crazy.
And when I look at, Sam, you guys know, right? When I look at average transaction prices today with incentives, with all the options, I'm seeing a lot of 60s. I'm seeing a lot of numbers now approaching 70s. Yeah, so I think when you look at what our average transaction prices will be, we're in a very competitive spot versus what I'm seeing in the market right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you can go out and get a GMC Canyon AT4X, that's well into the $70,000 range, and that's a significantly smaller truck.
But yeah, again, Sam, and Craig, I don't want to be naive to it. It's still a big chunk of money, and affordability and sort of pricing is very much top of mind. So we want to make sure that we're delivering upon our feature set promise to customers for that price. We want to give them a tool. We want to give them something they use. We want to give something that they find a lot of value from that money.
Mm-hmm. The EV tax credits going away, did that upend your plans at all, or had you already anticipated that they would be going away?
Our business case from the beginning was not dependent on any sort of incentive. Our business case was, let's make as great of a product as we can, as competitive of a price as we can, and let the market decide. Now, of course, with that, we certainly value policies that support American entrepreneurship and American innovation. And we think that's exactly what we're doing. But our business case was never predicated on any sort of incentive being available to the customer or to us.
Gotcha.
In terms of availability, we've talked about the direct sales and the service departments, but where are these vehicles actually going to be available for sale? Obviously, here in the U.S., at least in any states where the franchise laws allow it. What about Canada, Mexico, perhaps some overseas sales? Any export opportunities?
Right now, focused on having a successful launch here in the United States. This is what we built our business around, is winning here in America. Our whole value chain's in America, and that's for a reason. We wanted these vehicles to be developed and assembled and for the American market, in America for America. Of course, if we're allowed to dream big, we certainly see global potential. But right now, one thing at a time, we want to focus on really having a successful U.S. launch first.
Yeah. Just to piggyback off of your question there, Sam, Ryan, what is the shopping experience and what is the delivery process? So I go to scoutmotors.com, I go to the website, I build the vehicle that I want, I put a down payment on it, whatever. How do I take delivery? What is that whole process? If you could kind of walk us through that. And maybe you don't have it finalized yet. I don't know.
There's a few, I would say, non-negotiables. So that initial process from configuring to financing to closing your vehicle, we want that to be as seamless and as fast as possible. We have some very ambitious performance targets, less than 10 minutes, right around 10 clicks. I'm not exactly nailing these. I'm sure some of our commercial operations colleagues will get a little uncomfortable with me saying things like that.
But an easy process, yeah.
Well, it depends on how many options you choose.
But the point is easy and fast, and from a phone or from a laptop, of course, a digital first transaction process. That sort of then gets your order in, and then based on ETA to delivery, a series of things will then start to follow up. For example, you can start to get a estimated trade-in price for if you're trading in a used car. You'll be able to then automatically schedule a delivery at a time and an address that makes sense for you, right? So you go from order to then increasing steps of maturity, all pointing you towards doing a proper delivery, either at a Scout Motors brick and mortar facility that we had talked about, or delivered directly to you.
And ordering a car off a phone, maybe I'm old fashioned. I'd be very uncomfortable doing that, but that's just crazy, but also kind of super convenient at the same time. I wouldn't trust doing that myself, but
no, Craig, those same, of course, those same facilities where ultimately you'll be able to get service and delivery from, those same facilities will allow you to come and sort of quote unquote kick the tires beforehand as well, right? So you will be able to see these vehicles, you'll be able to sit in them, you'll be able to test drive them, but it will be on your terms, and all of it will be very digitally enabled and convenient and fast.
In terms of the production, are all the vehicles going to be built to order? So once a customer orders a vehicle, you build it, or are you also do you also plan to have some inventory available of popular combinations, so that if somebody wants their just standard gray Traveler, they can get that fairly quickly? And what kind of time frame do you anticipate between closing the order on your phone or your laptop to delivery?
Great question, Sam, and one that I answered bluntly. I hope all Scouts are built to order for years. That would mean, of course, that we have just tremendous amount of demand, and that we got this factory rocking, and that everyone's basically desperately waiting for their Scout. The reality is we'll likely have a built to order ramp up phase if I had to conjure up based on what I'm seeing in the market right now. But of course, it will likely go into a sort of inventory model at some point. Now, whether that some point is in months or years, I just don't know at this stage. I don't think any of us know, Sam. So that was the first part of your question. I think I missed the follow up.
If somebody does, you do a build to order for a customer, what kind of time frame are you looking at from the time they finish doing the transaction on their phone until the car is in their driveway or the truck is in their driveway?
Yeah, Sam, now this is also a very nuanced question, right? And I think it's going to come down to how fast do we want to ramp up this factory? So based on demand signals, we have the flexibility to ramp up the factory at a more accelerated pace or a more graduated pace. And when I say ramp up the factory, of course, I mean shift planning and just how fast we want to get this thing rocking. So if the demand,
I guess when you're up to kind of a stable production rate, and everything is kind of going the way it should be, we talking a week, 6 weeks, somewhere in between?
I think there's too many nuanced cases. It's hard to give just a one size fits all answer, Sam. I think that's the honest answer at this stage.
Okay.
So Scout Motors, a very proud American brand. You guys are bringing it back. You're doing a lot of your engineering and development work here in the U.S. You built a brand new factory in Blythewood, South Carolina. These vehicles are going to be built here in the United States. And that facility, you've got the annual capacity to build, I think, 200,000 vehicles per year, something like that, if I remember correctly. So a very large number of vehicles. I imagine the ramp up to that full production will be fairly gradual. What do you do, though, if there's way more manufacturing capacity in the factory than you have the ability to sell vehicles? So what if you're only selling, let's say, 50,000 vehicles a year, and you're making, you could theoretically make 200,000? Doesn't that increase your manufacturing costs and cause other problems? Or maybe you've already sorted all of this out.
A couple ways to answer this, Craig, and to answer it directly. I would much rather be answering that question as a clean sheet business versus a fully loaded, fully overheaded business that's trying to respond to that exact scenario. So for us, again, everything in this company is in fact built for purpose. We can build up the company, we could ramp up the company and scale the company to basically match demand signals one for one, as opposed to sitting on a bunch of costs that we don't know then what to do with. Then demand doesn't materialize. That's a problem. So we will scale up basically the entire company to match the real-time demand signals that we're seeing in the market. Now, why we have confidence is because some of those early demand signals that we're seeing are exactly what we want them to be. We're taking reservations. I think the last time we reported a number, we had over 150,000 reservations, which we're quite proud of.
Yeah.
And beyond the number of reservations is the details of the reservations, the context behind them. And the two things that really stand out is the much more normal 50 state distribution of our reservation holders. As you guys probably know, a lot of our other automotive new entrants have biased heavily towards the coast. We see much more of a normal 50 state distribution. And then the second very interesting thing we see is looking at what our reservation holders are driving today. You know, we see our EREV really having this ability to appeal to sort of both sides of the powertrain aisle. We see people who are driving EVs today, but we also see people reserving Scouts who otherwise normally wouldn't consider an EV. And we know that's because the range extender has opened up our addressable market to be able to kind of get both of them. And I think, frankly, that's really what the EREV has done, which is it's sort of guaranteed the demand that we need to ramp up this factory and to get it rolling at scale. But again, Craig, we'll respond to whatever the demand tells us to respond, and we'll adjust accordingly.
Mm-hmm. You don't have the baggage of a legacy automaker where you wouldn't have that flexibility, really.
Exactly.
Do you think having the EREV was a key to getting demand in the vast middle part of the country where a lot of truck and SUV buyers would be perhaps reluctant to go with a full BEV for that type of vehicle?
Yeah, Sam, it's a good question. And I do think we had a very compelling BEV only, to be clear, because I don't think that there was a lot of BEVs quite like ours. And what I mean by that is 35-inch tires from the factory, body on frame, solid rear axle, tactile interior, real door handles, mechanical lockers. You just don't see a lot of BEVs executed like that. So I want to acknowledge and recognize that those sort of baseline product characteristics, I also believe supported this idea of having 50 state appeal, no doubt. But when you pair that then with a gas engine and you're able to deliver upon a combined range of 500 miles, I think that's really what the game changer was, Sam. You know, there's a lot of people who I would say big chunks of the market who were open and curious about EVs, but who then ran into the uncomfortable range and charging sort of anxieties that we know are still very real for people that are out there. And with a gas engine on board functioning as the generator, those anxieties I think are largely overcome. And again, that's why we're seeing this 50 state appeal. That's why we're seeing this ability to conquest people who are driving gas cars today who otherwise normally wouldn't shop for an electrified product.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Can you give us an update on the breakdown between the pickup and the SUV, as well as pure electric and range extended?
On range extended, we've been publicly now in saying that it's the vast majority of our reservations. It's now over 85%.
Wow.
And, you know, this was something that we did research quite a bit. So we're not necessarily surprised by that high rate, but it really validates what we learned from our research, which is if you can give me all of the performance benefits of an EV, what I mean by that is the acceleration feel, the torque, the front trunk, software that can get better over the air, etc. But you can pair that with the confidence of a gas engine that allows me to go 500 miles in a combined range with the sort of overall cost of ownership advantages of having a vehicle that can be very efficient, that I can operate on electricity only. That's just a winning combination. And from our research, we started to see very clearly that that's a compelling offer that people would get behind. So no surprise when we put that to the test via reservations, that's what we saw.
One other question from the viewers on the previous video, and another future product question. Please bring us the Travel All, same size as the pickup, and raise the roof over the third row.
That sounded like a statement, Sam. No, I'm kidding. All kidding aside. My answer will be the same, which is we're very focused on Traveler and Terra. It's not easy launching two models, a factory, and a company at the same time. But one day when the time is right, we certainly see the potential.
Okay. So to date, we've only seen the concept versions of the Traveler and the Terra. When will the production models be unveiled approximately?
We haven't announced hard dates yet, Craig, but I think going back to what I brought up a little earlier, which is this year, we're very excited to start actually building our first validation models in Blythewood. That effort matures into 2027, and then at some point when the time is right, we will announce all of our offer structure detail, equipment detail, pricing detail, but no hard date locked yet, Craig.
Yes. much more to come before then. But Ryan Decker, Vice President of Strategy and Brand at Scout Motors, thank you so much for your time. This was a lot of fun. But before we cut you loose, we do one thing as we wrap up the show. It's called 3 for the Road, where we each share a tip, trick, or helpful tidbit of information to help drivers go green. And our question for the show today is, what is a misconception people have about the utility of electric vehicles?
Yeah, Craig. And I don't know if it's misunderstood, because I do think that the marketplace is now starting to really understand the value of being able to offboard power from an EV, right? We've seen the use cases of backup power for homes during storms, but you can also imagine being able to offboard power is a really nice capability to have at a campsite, at a job site, and of course for home backup power as well. Then you can also imagine how you can pair being able to offboard basically 240 volts of power from the battery with having that built-in gas power generator. It takes that same conversation, and just like the generator extends the range of the vehicle, it also extends the duration of which you can use your vehicle as basically a mobile power plant, a stationary mobile power source for, again, job sites, campsites, backup power for homes, or frankly, probably many different use cases in between. And so that's what we think is also sort of this thing that we don't probably talk about enough, which is having that high voltage battery plus the engine unlocks a lot of really interesting use cases in the field of being able to power a variety of applications. So that's my one more thing on that front, Craig.
Definitely. And Sam and I both have a couple suggestions as well. Sam, what have you got?
Yeah, I think one that I still hear sometimes, still hear from people, is just about the longevity of the batteries. We're all used to having the batteries in our phones wear out. Basically not be able to hold up much of a charge after about 2 years or so, and how long is the battery going to last in an EV? Am I going to have to spend $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 2-3 years from now to put a new battery in the car? And that's just not the case. All the data that we've seen, the real world data we've seen, with one or two notable exceptions that used some early EVs that used air cooled batteries. Everything else, the batteries are holding up really, really well. After 10 years, still getting 90+% of the original capacity in the battery, just because manufacturers have really figured out the chemistries to last longer, and also things like thermal management to keep the batteries from overheating. The batteries, it's going to go most of the life of the car.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and that's because they test them much more stringently than the usage that you see in the real world, right?
Yeah, that's one of the factors. And just the reality has been that as you said, the way it's used in the real world, the batteries are just holding up much better over time.
Yeah. And then finally, my misconception for people to think about if they're considering an electric vehicle is that EVs can often be more versatile than ICE-powered vehicles, because the packaging of the powertrain, you can have a front trunk, which is shockingly useful and awesome to have for stashing stuff. Also, you look at vehicles like the Rivian R1T, they've got that very clever gear tunnel that runs kind of below the back seat. So that's more storage space than you would have in a conventional pickup truck. So electric vehicles often can provide a lot more versatility than you might think. So that is our 3 for the road, 3 great tips for drivers to help you guys go green. But again, Ryan Decker, thanks so much for your time. Glad to have you on the show today.
Glad to be here. Thanks again, both.
Thanks.
Well, that was a super informative discussion, Sam. We learned a lot, and I thought it was quite interesting how Ryan filled us in on sort of the sales and service aspect of it. You'll be able to purchase online, do it from your phone, but they'll also have like brick and mortar facilities that are kind of going to act like dealerships, but also kind of not. I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, it's a little different from a traditional dealer. You're not going to go to these facilities to actually buy your car and sign all your paperwork. But they're there primarily for doing service on the vehicles, but you will also if there's one nearby, you can use it to take delivery of your vehicle. So once you've placed your order online or through the app, they can bring it to the dealer. You can pick it up there, or they can bring it to your home. And they will also have some vehicles there, if you want to do a test drive before you buy. And so you can potentially go there and take one out for a test drive. And one thing neglected to ask them is, if they'll follow a similar approach to what Rivian has started doing. Rivian's got their own charging network, and at many of those locations, they have one or two of their vehicles available there. That somebody is going by one of these and they want to test drive a Rivian before they order one, they can pull into the Rivian charging station and they can take one of these trucks out for a test drive. So maybe since Volkswagen Group also owns Electrify America, maybe we'll see something like that happen.
That'd be a perfect synergy right there.
Or you use an EA station as a delivery point. They can. It can bring your truck or your SUV to an Electrify America station near you, have it plugged in, fully charged, and you just go over there and pick it up and drive away.
Ready to go, just like that. It's interesting too, like these facilities are providing like 90% of a dealership experience, but they're kind of still.
Well, it's providing everything except the part that everybody hates.
This is true.
Which is talking to a salesperson and sitting down with the F&I person, going through, signing all these things. No, I don't want that warranty. I don't want this extended warranty.
Yeah, I don't need the tire warranty. Don't want the VIN etching. No.
Exactly. Yeah. So you get to skip all the part that people hate and just have the part that's actually useful.
Exactly. What else did we talk about? We learned about the tax credits. Those really aren't going to have any impact. The tax credits going away are not going to have any impact on their business. It sounds like they already had factored that in during product development. So that's good news, right?
Yeah. They, as you said, they did their business planning, assuming the absence of the tax credits. And I think, they actually internally started the conversations prior to 2022 when the Inflation Reduction Act tax credit program came in, assuming that, the old tax credit scheme was eventually going to go away. Then they got the IRA tax credits. Those are gone now. But, they did the planning assuming, we're going to have to sell eventually without any tax credits. So let's make sure we've got a business plan that works for that.
Yeah, you can't rely on something that will go away and could go away much earlier than expected. So
yeah, you can't rely on anything where politicians are involved.
This is correct. We also talked about the possibility. They didn't confirm anything, of course. They don't talk about future product plans, but they are, at least it seems, open to adding more models to the lineup, including maybe more affordable versions of these vehicles, sort of like the Rivian R2 or the R3.
Yeah, over time, I think it's reasonable to assume that once they stabilize production of the Terra and the Traveler, and they're churning those out at a consistent rate, and that they will want to grow the brand, and so Ryan said, we're definitely open to that, and so I would expect at some point we will see smaller, more affordable vehicles, maybe even as Christopher Street 2214 asked, a Travel All, a 3-row, with the length of the pickup truck, with a raised rear roof. So there's all kinds of possibilities.
Oh yeah, and you've got to think they'll go both directions, just because that's what automakers do. You got to go smaller and more affordable. You offer the 3-row version as well that's larger. What we did not learn though is whether that pickup truck is going to have a spare tire.
No, that's true. This is one of those things that I'm sure that they have been working on. They know that, especially for a vehicle that, is for a lifestyle audience, that they're targeting people who are going to go off road, that those customers want a spare tire. It sounded like, he mentioned, in bed spare tires. So most likely it'll be a situation like what you have with, some of the mid-size pickups that have larger tires, like the GMC Canyon AT4X, the AEV edition, which comes from the factory with 35-inch tires. That 35-inch tire will not fit under the bed in the usual space that you get on the standard Canyons. So you can get an optional in-bed mounted spare. Same thing on the Hummer EVs. They do that on there. The Cybertruck, you can get an in-bed mounted spare. So it sounds like that's the direction that Scout's probably going to go.
I think that makes the most sense because with the range extender, you're never going to fit it under
Yeah.
the bed where you would normally put it. There's no room there.
Right, and even the Rivian solution, where the Rivian R1T has sort of a trunk area in the back of the bed, and there's a space in there to put a spare tire in there. So you lift that up and you pull the spare out. That's not even going to work on this one because the Rivian has independent rear suspension, so the differential is not moving. So you've got more depth to work with in terms of putting a spare in there. The Scout vehicles are body on frame with a solid rear axle, so that axle's got to have room to move. So you're not going to have that bed depth to put it down underneath the base of the bed.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, a lot more details to come regarding these upcoming Scout vehicles, but it sounds like they're hard at work developing these things, so I look forward to a date when we can really learn the nitty-gritty details about the Traveler and the Terra. But at that point, Sam, I think we're done for today. Always a pleasure talking to you. Great interview.
Yeah, and always great to talk to you too, Craig.
Yeah, look forward to doing it again. And with that, thank you so much for watching GreenCars, the podcast, right here on YouTube. Now, the audio version of this show is available from all of your favorite podcast providers, so make sure to check that out. But next, click the link on screen to watch another fantastic GreenCars video, and make sure you subscribe to the channel while you're at it. But in the meantime, keep it clean and go green.